All right, cool. Yeah, for anyone new, this is the Austin Automation Professionals. So I've been doing this since probably late 2017, somewhere around there. Primarily, we focused on quality assurance and test automation and all those fun things. And then we kind of moved more into just a broader sense of automation. So whether that's infrastructure, chaos, or whatever else. So that's kind of what we've been doing over these past couple of years. We did a lot of events in person. As you know, things have changed, so we're experimenting with the idea of potentially doing something in person for November. So that's a possibility. Got more people coming in, so just something to keep in mind there. So if you're in the Austin area, we'll potentially have something in person outdoors, and then from there we'll also have a friend of mine talking about a company they're building that competes with Sauce Labs. So that should be pretty interesting. It's more on the quality focus side, but there's a bit of infrastructure involved with that talk as well. So that should be cool. So what I'm going to do the presentation, but I'm going to keep my eye on the participants just because I got to let people in. So I got to kind of do two things at once here. But if you are ever interested in giving a talk or anything like that, just hit us up. We're interested in, talks on automation, culture, whatever you got. But if there is enough interest in this subject, specifically AWS fault injection simulator, if there is enough interest, I might make a free course on it. So I might create that and submit that to Udemy. We'll see. But this is something that I've been currently working on, or working with, not on. So here is the slides. So I'm going to keep it. Just make sure I get the participant list over here. All right, cool. All righty. So we have KS Engineering Workshop. And of course, we have the Jurassic Park meme at this point. But so practical approach with myself, Evan Niedojadlo. Who am I? Just engineer. I'm focused on distributed systems right now. So specifically around, I'm working as an SRE. So this is something not only my interest, but this is what I also work on day to day. I also do YouTube, so check that out. I mean, this recording will go up on YouTube, of course. Might do some editing of that, but we'll see. But getting into it, why KS Engineering? So overall, really what we've been trying to do in my current organization is trying to solve for the unknowns. And this is, versus what you already planned for. So in our scenario, for our new infrastructure we're working with EKS. So the idea behind that is, it's highly available, it's resilient, et cetera. But realistically, it's like, is it really? So that's what we're solving for with some of our day-to-day work as well. So better understanding your systems as well. So as I mentioned, kind of like claiming high availability, kind of like talking a big game, is it truly resilient, that kind of thing. So resiliency, so improved availability, how many nines is kind of what we're looking for. Improved MTTX metrics. So for anyone not familiar, it's like mean time to R, so mean time to recovery, all of those kinds of things. Something to look into, and also something to look into there is replacing those with SLOs. I know it's a kind of a hot topic these days, so something to check out. And then adding incidents in an automated regression sweep. So this is something we're not doing actively, but this is something I've read about across a few blogs as well as some other YouTube videos out there. So basically, an incident occurs, you reproduce that incident as however you do it, and then you put that into a pipeline. So whether that's through a tool like Gremlin or whatever that might be. So something to consider there. It's kind of interesting work. So very brief history. So a lot of this information is already out there. I wanted to keep this as practical as possible, but I mean, realistically, undocumented reports of people intentionally restarting servers. So that's kind of like the history of fault injection, going back all the way to like the 1970s. So I mean, the idea of KS engineering has been around for quite some time. It's been around for a long time. I guess formally, the term itself was was spawned out of Netflix. So it's like 2010, 2011. So that's with the Netflix Chaos Monkey. So something there, kind of 2012. So Phoenix servers, that was something that was mentioned as well. So kind of around the similar time frame. 2012 onward, so kind of like more of the platform as a service approach. So such as Gremlin, Varica, AWS FIS, etc. And there's more of a reference here. Anyone interested, if you want to dive into the history, by all means, here's the link. Something, it's very interesting, so something to check out. So various tools, so undocumented reports. Various tools. Let me actually take that out, because I just quite literally created these slides. So various tools. So we got the Chaos Monkey, we have Gremlin, we have Varica, AWS Fault Injection Simulator, Chaos Mesh, if you are in the Kubernetes land, and many, many more at this point. So there's all sorts of various tooling out there, as well as manually doing this yourself. So something I've done personally is one of the projects I was working on was spinning up highly available Vault instances. So for anyone not familiar with Vault, it's a HashiCorp product, allows you to do secrets management, and something to test that high availability out myself. So something that I did was quite literally manually turning off the EC2 instances. So what actually happens? Try going to your endpoint and see if it's properly load balanced to a healthy instance. So it could be something as simple as that, or you could utilize like this large tool suite for it. So that's kind of the basics. We can kind of dive into that a bit more afterwards. So getting started, and this is really like what we did to get started. There's just for getting started, and this is a big one. Like I said, this is something that we did. Just to give a little more context, we're a small team. So the SRE team that I'm working with right now, we have about 3 people. We have got about 3 people ops folks. We've got about 5 or so. Actually, let me load up chat too. So I got some chat messages over here. Oh, I got you. I saw your messages there. Yeah, and then I got another question over there. So to answer another question, we have a recording. This recording will be on YouTube. So if you go over to the meetup page, there will be a link to the YouTube channel where this will be posted, and I'll make sure to get this posted pretty quickly too, so y'all can check it out and dig into it a bit more, because I know there's a bunch of links and kind of stuff I'm kind of breezing through. So, and at the end we'll dive into some questions too, just to make it a little bit easier. Yeah, just getting back to getting started. So the context there, we're a very small team. So by getting started for us, it means quite literally like digging into it ourselves. We don't have really a lot of direction as far as, some leadership saying like, hey, we should do chaos engineering or something like that. It's collectively, it's quite a group of us at the moment. So we're kind of like doing a bit of self-management at the moment. So this is what we did. We kind of understood chaos engineering, really what that means as much as we could, the reasoning behind it, why we're doing it. So for us, really what we wanted to do was what we described back over here. I mean, the main reasoning for us was really solving the unknowns, because the current organization I'm at, we have quite a bit of legacy. So this isn't a greenfield project or anything we're working on. We're doing some fun stuff with EKS in the sense that we're moving some workloads from, this is the same old story at a lot of organizations right now, but we're moving some workloads over from some legacy systems over to newer infrastructure, the shiny infrastructure. So that's what we're doing here. But to solve for some of those unknowns, we were reading about chaos engineering. It's amazing in the sense that you can kind of solve for those unknowns. So that's what we did. We applied it to the context of our organization being a fairly small organization. So that's something we did there. So there's a bit of the learning curve there, and then what we wanted to do from there was like assemble the teams that will conduct experiments. So this isn't restricted to SRE. If it was, we wouldn't have time to do our day-to-day work. So we did create some project work around this. So that's something to keep in mind. But we also got the buy-in. Well, we got the buy-in because we were dealing with some outages. So our buy-in was a bit easier because we were already experiencing some issues. So that was something there. And then as far as like assembling the teams, we did pull in some team members from the ops teams. So, DevOps, infrastructure, however, whatever you want to call those teams. We just refer to them as ops internally. Some folks kind of like more focused on building out the infrastructure. So we also wanted to include our test teams. So we pulled in a couple of members from the quality teams to provide some insight. So some of the day-to-day issues that they face, some things that they can think of as well, to provide just kind of a mix of thinking in there. So we wanted to connect the hypothesis and experiments of the team members. So in this sense, and I'll get to this in a bit as well, just to some of the specific things that we actually worked on, so that you can have some takeaways to potentially think of some things to apply to your organizations as well. But yeah, so some of those hypotheses and experiments, something might as simple as turning off a node in EKS. From there, what happens, that kind of deal. And this is learning while doing. So a lot of this comes down to creating project work around the discovery. So we're going to end up discovering items from these experiments itself. From there, we're going to iterate on the process. What can we do better? What occurs? What's the outcome? And then we take it further from there, and then we repeat it. And as far as how often we're actually repeating something like this, at the moment we have something called a game day. So this game day is about once a month where we all get together in different time zones. So we're all in different time zones, difficult time zones too. So so we get up on some fairly early morning calls, and then we conduct these experiments. We write down these hypotheses, and then we take it from there. So that's kind of our process, and it's still fairly new to our organization. But there's something where we do see value in it, and the business value itself is essentially for us right now, it's keeping the lights on. It's making sure our systems are moving forward. So some examples. What tools are we using? So right now we're using AWS Fault Injection Simulator. We are primarily, some context there, we are primarily on AWS. In the past, we have worked with Google Cloud as well. So, we are, I guess, multi-cloud by mistake in some sense. So we still have some workloads running on GCP, but we're not really doing enough there. So the buy-in for AWS FIS was cost, of course. So costs are fairly neutral in comparison to some of the other tooling that's out there. We didn't really have to worry about the multi-cloud approach too much. So I know there's a lot of tools that focus on that. And they go into depth. We didn't really have to go in depth on some of the experiments that we were running. So something to keep in mind there as well while you're, and all resources will be at the end, so I can kind of fill you in on all of that. So various manual approaches, so something I kind of touched on a bit earlier. Simple, you can start with chaos engineering simply as going in there and turning some of your instances off on staging. Don't do that in production, hopefully. So something to check out there as well. And then you can, of course, something we're looking into is like updating the key value so that it's incorrect. So an example of that would be some of our third-party integrations. So you can take a value that's like a third-party key, whatever it might be, in order to actually communicate with that third-party service, and quite literally just remove it and see how your application or your service handles that. So we use CloudWatch. So CloudWatch right now is for the stop alarms, and that's directly connected to AWS FIS. So you have various stop scenarios. There's ways to automatically stop this when you're running an experiment, and we'll look at that in a second. And then at the moment we're using New Relic. I know this is a bit opinionated. A lot of people use various tools for observability and monitoring. The background behind that is we were using New Relic for a long time. I've worked with Prometheus and Grafana and a bunch of other tooling, but this is ultimately what worked for us because we worked with it for a very, very long amount of time. And then the other piece there is they ended up rebranding and then opening up essentially all their tools that we were paying for individually at one point. And then they opened it all up to us. So now we have access to browser and all sorts of various different tools. So something there. So that is, what we are using at the moment. That is our chaos stack. And this can and will vary across different organizations. So other examples, So what are some of the initial experiments? And this is what we're looking into at the moment. So we wanted to kind of focus on API gateway, so specifically latency around that, what it means for all of these, what it means for latency to impact that. So something interesting, AWS ECR, so Elastic Container. So we wanted to really look at what ECR has as far as like, what's the impact as far as an outage. And we've seen the impact. In fact, during that US West 2 outage that they had, it was a fairly large outage. Almost the entire, I believe the region was down. We had an issue where our cluster was not pulling our containers from ECR. So we ran into quite a few issues where we had one pod kind of holding on for dear life during that outage. And it was, on hindsight, it was kind of silly, but at the end of the day, it was costing a lot of harm. So that's why we're looking into that as well. And then failure for third-party integrations, where we have a heavy dependency on a lot of various third-party integrations, as do a lot of companies these days. So death by a million cuts, all that kind of thing. We wanted to kind of see from a fault injection scenario what actually happens to the systems if we remove some of these. So, I mean, there's a lot of examples there as well. And then, of course, stress testing on microservices themselves. What's the outcome of that? I mean, you could argue that this is primarily more in the kind of the performance testing piece, but it can kind of fall into that chaos space as well. So hence why we involved some of our folks in the test space to kind of work on this with us. So that's all of those pieces. And I wanted to actually kind of show you what we're dealing with on my personal AWS account. This is not the company AWS account. So if you are on AWS, and I don't believe Google Cloud, I work on both clouds right now, so I don't believe Google Cloud has something out of the box for this. But if you are in AWS, a lot of shops are, you can navigate to something called AWS FIS. You can kind of search for that, read through the docs, get familiar with it. So it is they're kind of out of the box solution for injecting some chaos into your infrastructure. So at the moment, this is more specific for infrastructure. So here's the pricing that you can check out, the chaos experiments themselves. So if you go over here to create a template, well, even before, if we go and do that, there are some IAM restrictions, of course, because you're dealing with some destructive, some really destructive scenarios. So as you can imagine, if somebody gets a hold of this particular tool, from a security standpoint, they can go into your systems and destroy quite a few things, have some fun. So that's something to keep in mind there. So if you have a separate security team that's kind of handling access and all of that, just make sure they're aware of it. Make sure that, those policies are put in place. So as far as the case experiment is concerned, your IAM role is going to be here. So we've got a couple of test roles that I've created for myself. You have some stop conditions here. You have various targets that you can choose. You can just test this out. You can choose your options. So your resource types at the moment for FIS are restricted to EC2 instances, so EC2 spot instances, which are chaotic in themselves. So RDS, which I thought was kind of cool. So if you have an RDS cluster, you can kind of experiment with this as well. ECS, so if you all are still on ECS, if you have some workloads over there, something to check out. EKS, of course, I know chaos is very much focused, it's heavily focused on distributed systems based on a lot of the companies that I've talked to. They're doing a lot of things around whatever their Kubernetes cluster, whatever their flavor is, GKE, KS, however they want to do it, Rancher, et cetera. And then IAM role, which I am not familiar with. So I'm assuming there's some kind of experiments relating to that. So that's kind of interesting. And then the IDs themselves, and then the selections. So there's a lot of options here. You can, of course, tag these experiments. And when you do end up creating a template themselves, really quickly, the stop conditions. So you do want to go ahead and set a CloudWatch alarm for that. So this is an automated way for you to stop that experiment. Otherwise, you can manually stop that experiment as well. So something to keep in mind there. Let's see. So this is, once you do create that experiment, you have this experiment templates page. So I do already have one in here that I was going over internally at my organization. So You can name this, of course. I gave it a description. And this description here is, so this is a test experiment that stops any EC2 service with the tag ENV testing. So in our case, environment testing. And then, the actions themselves, you can just go ahead and, you manage the tags, delete the experiment, or update it. So you can update these existing experiments, or you can go ahead and start it. And what we're going to do here is we have a couple of EC2 instances running, some unnamed ones. And what it should do is we have a couple of these instances have the tags specified here. So we have ENV testing. So if we go over here to actions, if we go ahead and here start this experiment, and then it's go ahead and start it, and it warns you for good reason, and then you can go ahead and start it like so. We'll just give that a minute. So the state over here is just initiating, gives you the start time. It logs all of this, of course. So if someone starts an experiment on production, for example, it's all logged. So it's not, you don't have randos in here creating experiments. So I'll just give that a minute. And this failed. Your resolving targets incidents does not exist. I must have specified the exact instance itself. Let me go ahead and update this. Yeah, there you go. Resource ID. Specify that one. Go ahead and update that experiment template. It warns you again. It's pretty proactive as far as the warnings go. And then we will go ahead and try and do that again. So let's give it a shot. Warns us again. Go ahead and start that. You know what? I'm wondering if there's a Terraform provider for FIS yet. Something we'll want to look into. So this state is running now. So if we go over here, we should see this specific instance stopping. That's good. There's our tags. Cool. And this is quite a basic example, I will say. And then, of course, there's no alarms over here. So if you wanted to go over here and stop that, you'd have to go over here and actually stop that experiment. But the point is, say, for example, if you have a cluster, you have like 3 EC2 instances in that cluster. And if you want to go ahead and target specific instances or tags, you can go ahead and do that via FIS. And there you go. There's your experiment running. And then from there, as a team, you would want to be monitoring this and identify, how did the service itself react? It's one thing that the infrastructure itself is turned off. And that's something in itself. And quite frankly, it'd be interesting to see some of that data as well. Maybe, the service, when you turn this instance back on, maybe the service causes the CPU memory to spike or something like that. Something to look into. Maybe there's a cold start, if you're doing something like Lambda. So also something interesting to check out, but it's a very basic example, but it gives you the idea of, what something like FIS is actually capable of doing, and how your teams can potentially utilize something like this. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and stop that experiment. Say, for example, this was causing some uproar. We didn't have an alarm set. I'm going to stop that. That's cool. And then that's a pretty basic example. It does what we need to do. And then there's our stop instance. That experiment's complete. And then here we are. So it's restarting, so it's pending, and that should be back up to running again. All right, so moving over here, we have some resources. And quite literally, like the one resource that I provided was awesome chaos engineering. So what this means is just go over here. And then you have a whole bunch of resources for chaos engineering. So if you want to check out all the books, the education, notable tools, so it goes into much further detail. It's something to check out. So quite a few papers, retired tools, blogs, podcasts, conferences. So there's a whole bunch. It's so if you know the whole idea behind just putting one resource, or sorry, putting multiple, a handful of resources on here doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I wanted to provide a larger amount of resources here. So something to check out. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share, and then I wanted to kind of dive into stop my video. Restart my video. Wanted to answer some questions. Any questions on what we went over, what chaos engineering even is? The idea behind this meetup was to provide everyone like what we're currently using, like what my organization's using at the moment, so you can take that with you.
Hello, this is Balaji here.
Hey, Balaji.
I would like to know if we can integrate this chaos engineering thing in the release pipeline.
Yep. So we can. I don't. For FIS, this is something that I have to look further into. We're doing this. We're running FIS manually at the moment for our game days. I know the company Gremlin speaks quite a bit around this. They talk about adding it to your CI/CD pipeline. We're looking into it specifically around the purpose of like if an incident occurs, we're going to think of it as more of like in testing, like a regression suite. So we want to automate that incident and then potentially put it in our pipeline, and then continuously run that however we want to do that, whether it's a couple of times a week, a couple of times a day. It just depends. Nightly incidents, whatever you want to call it. There's various ways to do it, as you can surely imagine, just as the test space. So that's one way of doing it. There's a few other talks on there, like on YouTube. You can probably search for one. If you search CI/CD chaos engineering, there's a few that come up that kind of focus around keeping the build itself green. So I thought that was a kind of interesting one as well. So, but yeah, the long answer, the short answer to your question is yes.
Yes, so actually, because Gremlin, seems to we can integrate as part of the release pipeline, but AWS FIS, the fault injection simulator, what sort of fault it injects? It's any sort of like cloud related stuff. Like I wanted to do this attack of bringing down the EC2 instances or my containers that runs something like that.
Yeah. So off the top of my head, we haven't done it. So that's something my organization is not doing at the moment. Let me take a quick look. So there are some samples with AWS FIS. So there is an entire repo which I can post in the comments on the meetup. I'm not seeing anything specific to adding it to any pipelines at the moment. You know what? Here it is. So additional samples. So there are some samples right here. This is something that we have not done yet because we're still fairly new to this. At least over, to FIS itself, is include, so there is a section right here. So include AWS fault injection simulator experiments in your CI/CD pipelines. So there is some examples, and I'll include those within our meetup page as well as a comment. And just for you to check that out, let me go ahead and share my screen.
That really helps. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. And then we have another we have a really good question. So David wrote, how do you prioritize your experiments to address the most significant risks? So how we're doing that right now, and this is once again just based on the organization that I'm working at the moment, we're prioritizing it in two ways. One of which is what is, I mean, in some context, what I used to do from the test side is prioritize end-to-end test for cost. And, for SRE, how am I prioritizing things like SLOs and air budgeting and all that kind of thing? What services are we providing SRE support for? I'm identifying the services that make the company money. How, from a business value, I can sell this internally almost entirely on how does the company make money? So that's one. So one is focusing these types of experiments on services that are more specific to how the business creates its income, and then two, what incidents have already occurred. And that's kind of a tragic example. It's kind of a bad scenario given, like I said, the state. It all depends on what your organization is doing, their history, how they've handled their legacy migrations and all these kinds of things. But those are the two main focus points for our prioritization. Cool.
Anything do you know that is PCA friendly tool for the chaos engineering test?
Yeah, and I mean that's an entirely different section as well. I mean, for us right now, it's something that we have to be wary of, but not, I mean, I'm not in this space, like say, for example, like defense or health or anything like that. So that's something, and actually, oddly enough, I had a conversation earlier with a friend of mine at a company, one of the co-organizers at this meetup, and what they're working on right now is actually a pacemaker. So they're doing amazing work, very noble work in what they're doing, but something like that is going to be, I would imagine, focused on the dev side, on the staging side. Nothing like that, in my opinion, will ever reach production. I know financial companies as well are a bit more strict on this, and you do read some blog posts about a lot of, even some people writing about this just in general, like the fun and the joy of like doing something like this in production, and like just doing it on production, have fun, do it. We couldn't do that. So we couldn't do that for the reasoning of cost, of course, and as far as like compliance, not as much. So I can't really speak, as I can really speak to the PCI compliance piece, but based on some of the people that I've talked to in the community, they're not able to do it at all. And they have to control what they're doing, even on it at a test level. So like the tests that they're writing, some of the automation that they're writing. So it's very, very, very locked down.
So this is Sanket. I have you, I think, very open-ended question here. Is that you mentioned each company, each product has its own personality, but ultimately the idea here with chaos engineering is to make the products more resilient and let like services function either integrated mode or full-fledged working mode, right? And it has very direct connection with the capacity planning as well. I was wondering if there is any, I know it's too early in chaos engineering world, but I was wondering if there is any like globally vetted list of scenarios, right? Like for memory, you do this, for CPU, do this, for IOPS and network bandwidth, you do this, like some standard scenario from which we can just literally cherry pick that, hey, my application is either DB heavy or IO heavy or CPU heavy.
Yeah, and that's so oddly enough, there is a company that's done this. That's a fantastic question. I mean, that was one of our issues as well, to getting started with all of this. And I enjoyed your mention of capacity planning, because that's actually something I'm working on this quarter. It's kind of cool. Yeah, and capacity for us, just really quickly, we want to understand a baseline as to what can our systems even handle. So that's kind of the main reasoning. And then a cool kind of thing that comes out of that is what costs are involved with that. Why are we running our EKS clusters at with an 85% CPU availability throughout the week? We're paying for something that we don't need. So there's like two sides of that coin, and probably many more facets as well. So I think it's very interesting. But so around let's see, to answer your question, there is some resources, and there are, if I can actually find it. So the company that I'm talking about right now, let me go ahead and share my screen. Well, quickly before I do that, let me search for what they're doing here. So it's called Varica. Varica is the company. It is a chaos engineering company. One of the things that I've noticed, a lot of people who came out of the chaos engineering fame in that space, the Chaos Monkey and the Netflix engineers, some of those folks ended up creating their own companies, understandably. Who wouldn't do that, right? So you get, you have that knowledge, you're an expert in that field, and then Varica is one of those companies. So what I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. The reason why I'm mentioning Varica is because they did something very cool. First off, their company is very cool, but they also created something called Void. And Void is, and I know they're going to paywall you on this, they want your data, but the Void report, really what they're doing here, and this is fine, they did the work, so why not give them the data, right? So Void is basically an index, a collection of incidents. So it's a collection of incidents from organizations, something we do internally at my organization. If we have the time, what we want to do, because we work with a lot of third parties, and we have some third party monitoring in place and some third party alerts. So we plug into their status pages, and we have a status page as well. And I'm sure you or may or may not as well. And the cool thing about the status pages is sometimes you can read the outcome of the problem. So what occurred for them? What could you learn from those organizations? So that's something we've done internally. The difficulty there is if you want to learn from all of those organizations, because nobody has that time. I don't know anyone who has that amount of time to go through each of these incidents. So what Void does is you have a collection of these incidents kind of filtered in. And I wish I could provide an example. Varica EKS or Varica Void. Here we are. So we have a collection of 1,820 incident reports for a lot of organizations, and I think that's really cool. So really, what you can do here, you might be able to type in a specific type of service or infrastructure. So like EKS, for example. Yeah, maybe if you dig into that, it kind of shows them the technology. No, it can't be that. It digs into the technology that they actually use. But the point is, or actually just Kubernetes. So I would say it's somewhat limited, understandably now, because there's a lot to gather. But if you type in specific technologies, you can probably get a good understanding of some of the incidents that occurred for them and why. So it's not maybe an exact answer. There's not like one place to go to where it's just straight up like, I want a run book for this, I want a run book for that kind of scenario. A lot of the run books that we've had to create internally have been based on incidents that occurred internally. We took a couple, and there are some out there on GitHub, for example, like around Kubernetes. So something to check out here. And the Void, I would absolutely check out, because you can kind of get an understanding of what occurred and why, to kind of prepare you for some hypotheses and potential experiments that you want to run on your own. So it's a long answer, but it's a couple of resources for you to check out, because it's something we've looked into as well.
So I really appreciate. I did not know about this. I'll look at it after this. So this is good. What my question more was like, I haven't used Gremlin. Frankly, I haven't used any chaos engineering. I just gone through the theory aspect of it, and I'm living in my own dream of testing my own company's product, right? So I'm planning to start that. The question more of like what I was asking is that, is there any tool out proprietary or open source which help us find the fragile pieces in the solution stack, or gives us hint that, hey, these are the probably 2 or 3 other than the architecture, because SPOF and those kind of things, maybe you need some experience and previous outages to consider before you can figure out that, okay, this is the scenario I want to run. But other than that, like I said, there are some tiers in microservices which are IO bound or CPU bound or memory bound. Those are, we can simply, any tool, any simple, not even machine learning tool, any simple observability tool can figure out that, hey, when the load increases on this end, that's when it is, the IO has direct relation, right? So it's simple correlation mapping through which we can easily figure out that, hey, this is possible scenario. I might run into this kind of situation if the auto scaling is not set up in EKS or wherever.
Yeah, and exactly. I agree with you there. There's that, there is the context of, so to quickly answer your question, I haven't seen anything that provides the direct correlation to some potential fragility within the system. So the idea of chaos engineering is to discover that fragility that you might not have anticipated. So it's discovering for the unknowns. And that's exactly what we did, because as you know, what we've done is, we once again, we're like building out this wonderful Kubernetes highly available infrastructure, but yet we talk about, we talk about this idea of like, oh, we can handle this, this, and this, and this, but without testing it, we're unable to know, the true faults there. So there's the context of the people, the people working on this will have to have the understanding of, knowing the bounds of infrastructure, maybe some common scenarios. So the issue there becomes they have to have that experience to understand some of these things. And in some sense, it's problematic. But there are some tools such as Gremlin, as you mentioned, that will provide you, and most of the chaos engineering tools, they'll provide you kind of like the out of the box scenarios for you to try. Say, for example, you have an EKS infrastructure, they're going to provide you of common scenarios for you to run those experiments. And then from there, after you run those scenarios on staging, for example, or dev, however you're doing it, then you can see maybe, you can discover that fragility that you were referring to, that those issues that might be specific to your services, to your stack. Say, for example, you're a Java shop or something. So that's kind of where I see it as.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stretch. I know I'm stretching it here, but it's just very difficult for me to digest that it has a lot of manual effort involved everywhere just to figure out, like in 2021, to figure out what is easy to break, right? But that's where we are. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, and once again, after this, after we all hang out, I'll post a comment on the meetup page of the resources that were mentioned either in the quick talk or how we've been discussing it. But yeah, that's something we've faced as well. There's certainly a learning curve just getting around, like, there's the theory, and that's why I wanted to focus on, what we're using. I didn't want to do yet another talk about the theory, because I've listened, when I'm doing dishes and stuff like that, I'm listening to, I'm listening to these things. I've listened to probably 10 or 15 of these chaos engineering talks, and a lot of it discusses the theory. And I wanted to focus this on more so on how can I apply this? What am I actually using right now? And of course, I wanted to make it clear the context will differ per organization, all different tooling, all different clouds, all different services, all different languages, all different team culture as well. So that's there's a lot that goes into it. It's highly complex. So companies that I've talked to in the Austin area, they've done this fairly successfully, but for the most part, chaos engineering in itself has been quite an experiment for a lot of organizations. I know a lot of shops are hiring for it. They're hiring for SREs, but they get thrilled about the experience of chaos engineering, right? So I know to give you an example, I know Indeed.com, they have chaos engineering. They have like different SRE roles internally, supposedly. I know one is like SRE dash like chaos engineering. So they focus entirely on that, which I thought is interesting. The other thing is some teams will, like ourselves included, will rotate it. So we'll rotate on call and stuff like that. And then we'll kind of take it from there. We'll do on call, we'll rotate on call. We'll include different teams because the context of our organization, we're a small team. And, if we did it just with just our 3 SREs, we're not going to have the time to do our other work as well. Oh, awesome question, Bailey. Blue team, red team, blue team. We don't currently do that internally, but it's awesome. So the DevSecOps space and the security space is wicked cool. Some teams that are doing that are really neat. But yeah, we're not doing that internally at the moment. And shockingly, a lot of other shops small to medium-sized shops that I've talked to in the Austin area, they're not either, at least in-house. They'll try and get some folks that are like more, they'll try and get some consultants that come in and do these kinds of things. But I know like some larger companies are doing things like that. If anyone can find that talent right now, it's like, if you have the talent that knows infrastructure security and a deep understanding of services, then it's going to be a fun time. Those are some cool people. Bill has said another value for chaos engineering for cyber attack analysis is that the resource available is small for many reasons. Chaos engineering substitute machine cost for humans. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, that's I mean, we're trying to automate as much as possible, given the fact that our context is a bit different than others, but we're trying to automate a lot of that kind of thing. There's the security side of things as well. Like, I mean, there's some of the automation of adding the security to pipeline in itself, something we've experimented with a long time ago. I think I did a talk in like 2018, where we were doing some OWASP Zap stuff. So quick story, we were doing, we're still doing like some Python NN tests, and within those Python NN tests, we wanted to import the OWASP top 10, problematic issues and trying to run some static analysis and all of that. So we wanted to do that to free up some of our own time. So while we didn't necessarily have a security team per se, we worked on some of these things at actually the organization I'm currently at. So we did automate some of that security, but realistically, like, how much of that security can you really automate? So that's a problem as itself. Yeah, it'd be cool. Maybe we can do something like that as well. Maybe I can do some talks on that. I'm not working too much on that these days. My focus has been very much so on the infrastructure space, but doing infrastructure, you got to think of the security side of things as well. But yeah, it was a talk a long time ago. I think it's online. I think it's on YouTube somewhere. But it was a fun talk, and I think Accruent, some friends of mine over at Accruent took some of the things we were talking about back then and actually applied it to their organization. So it was cool to hear that. So it's kind of neat. But yeah, the DevSecOps thing is I think there's another meetup in Austin. If y'all want to check it out, I think it quite literally is like DevSecOps. I don't know what they do over there. I'm sure they're pretty cool. So give them a shot too. So check out what they're doing. As far as like the security stuff, I might be able to talk to that.
The other thing about the DevSecOps is pretty soon they're going to have they do about 12 talks. They call it the 12 Nights of Christmas or something. So in that December time frame, there's going to be a heck of a lot of good information, a lot of good guys who worry about what I just put in there about security issues.
Nice. Yeah. I remember that Cloud Austin. So they do the 12 Clouds of Christmas. So I've done a few talks over there. Yep. I did a few things over there. Cool. Yeah. Cool group of people. Check it for anyone in the meetups. Yeah, probably. Check out Cloud Austin. Check out Austin DevSecOps. I think they're called. Could be wrong. Check them out. Some of the stuff we're doing. Maybe we'll get some more security stuff in the future. But I know that's amazing. Anyone working in that space is doing some amazing things. If they're So yeah. But if anyone else any other questions, let me know.
Well, speaking of Cloud Austin, on October 28th, they've got a 24-hour live streaming event with just a whole bunch of sessions that's available to globally. Essentially, they're covering all time zones. It's actually looks pretty interesting. So maybe throw that on the mailing list.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. Hey, what's going on, Daryl? It's a long time Austin Automation member. Yeah. So something to check out. I think it's like All Day DevOps. I remember that couple groups. Yeah, we'll make a push about that too. It's a good call. Yeah, there's tons of cool people over there doing all sorts of different talks. And there's so much information these days. So like for any of the talks, what I try and do for anyone kind of overwhelmed, pick what you're working on, is what I usually do. I can pick some things that I'm kind of interested in too, but like I usually pick what I'm working on and then kind of like either look at the recording, or if you got the time, try and hop into the call itself. But I'll look at the recording and do it at like 1.5 speed and kind of run it in the background to do some learning. That's what I usually do. Maybe that could help some other people. Thank you, Bob. Oh, another longtime member too. It's cool. But yeah, that's all I got personally. I'll edit this, of course, and make the post to YouTube, and then just post it there for anyone that couldn't join up. I think it was like 70 people that signed up, and we had a nice small group tonight, so that's cool. But yeah, that's a funny thing about Meetup. If you create an event, you got like 100 people, you can expect like 10-20% of that. And then in November, for anyone that's in the Austin area, we'll try and do something in person, and then we'll do something online as well. So I got a friend of mine who's building a company that's competing with Sauce Labs. So they'll do a talk. It's not a vendor talk or anything like that. We try and avoid like doing a whole lot of vendor talks, but usually, and that's what we do. We do talk to the recruiters sometimes and vendors and whatnot. If it helps someone, we'll try and include them, but we don't want to get to the point where it makes it annoying for everyone. So. Oh yeah. Hey Alberta. Let me post the meetup page real quick. Let's do this. We got a sponsor for the next meetup, in-person meetup. So like I said, we'll make it outside. We'll make sure everyone who wants to go is comfortable with that and all that. And then we'll get some drink tickets for anyone who wants a beer, a lemonade, whatever you want. So we'll try and make that happen. So here's the meetup. I'll post that in the chat. Everyone in the meetup, here you go. So this is the meetup that you're currently in. So that's the current one. No problem. And that's about it for me. Yeah. But yeah, so look forward to the YouTube video. I'll post that, make an announcement for that one, send it to the mailing list. Cool. Alberto, check out, I know you just posted a question. Check out the links that we're going to post to that meetup. So check that out. I'll write some comments over here as well. Let me post that to everyone. So go ahead and check that out. I'll post some comments there. This will be good for beginners. I know like chaos engineering is kind of a very intense subject for beginners. The links that I post, or the link I should say, will cover like everything to do with chaos engineering. Like you'll quite literally have like every resource that everyone has done a pull request on the GitHub page for. So, but cool. Yeah. Anyways, like I said, I'll make posts about the upcoming events and whatnot. We got a book club too. So let me actually post that real quick. I've been doing the book club. Book club is actually pretty chill. We have the next book we're doing, I believe, is the Bootstrap and Kubernetes with Terraform. So check that out. And for the book club, I got a sponsor. So we're sponsored by Manning Publications. I'm talking to their people, I think like next week, about getting everyone free books and all that good stuff. So something to check out if you're interested, if you got the time. I know everyone's kind of busy these days and kind of sick of Zoom calls and all that good stuff. But yeah, so check that out too if you get a chance. That's about it for me. Hopefully everyone has a good rest of the day, night, wherever you're at. Just take care, take it easy. That's about it. So I'll see y'all.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, see you later.